Hello, and welcome to this tutorial on getting started with Python. Maybe you've come here because you've heard about this machine learning stuff and you're interested in where to start. Or you've heard that coding is a superpower and you want to change your career. Either way, you're probably wondering, where do I start? And the answer is right here in this tutorial. So let's get started. We're going to cover two topics in this video: how to download and install Python, and also how to set up your development environment, including choosing a code editor. Let's talk about two ways you can download and install Python. The first could be through python.org. This will give you a basic installation. The second, which I'm going to recommend as the easiest way to get started, is through Anaconda. Anaconda is a Python distribution. That means that the company has packaged Python and a bunch of other software together in a convenient bundle. This includes a lot of great tools that are going to be helpful to get started with your learning experience. So I mentioned you can download things through python.org. So if you've done so, great. But let's go to anaconda.com/distribution or download. You'll want to click this download button in the center of the page. Then what we want to do is make sure we get Python 3.7. Now you might note here that Python 3.7 is not the latest version of Python, but that's okay. We'll be able to install 3.8 in a clean virtual environment later. Let's go ahead and open up the downloads folder and run the Anaconda installer. Hit next. Hit I agree. Just me works fine. Defaults are great. So I'm going to recommend we do check this box that says add Anaconda to my path environment variable. This is going to let us type in Python directly into our command prompt or terminal and access the commands like you would see in most tutorials and documentation. So the installation of Anaconda may have taken a while, but once that's done and completed successfully, go ahead and hit next. Hit next again. And if you want, you can read this documentation or you can go ahead and click finish. Let's open up your command prompt or your terminal to check and make sure that the installation installed as expected. First thing we can do is type python -- version, and you should see it display the version of the installed Python. The next thing we can check is pip with pip version, and this should also display the version of the installed pip package manager. Pip is used to install different Python libraries and packages. If you type Python directly into the command prompt, you'll launch the Python Interactive Interpreter. Now the first time you do this, you might receive this warning about the interpreter is in a Conda environment but it's not been activated. Now you can do this by typing conda activate base, which will activate the base environment. You can type conda version and check that the version of conda is installed. Once you've activated this environment, you can type Python and it should activate the interactive interpreter without that warning. There you go. Print hello world. Now you're writing Python code. Okay, we just did something that might be a little bit confusing. First, we used a program called Conda. What's that? We also used a program called pip, which I briefly explained is to install libraries and packages are like modules that Python uses to add new features. You can write your own, but enough of that later. Conda is similar to pip in that it's a package manager that's included with Anaconda. You can use Conda to install packages just like pip. Pip install Jupyter installs the Jupyter package. Conda install Jupyter installs the Jupyter package, but from the Conda repository instead of the Python package index or Python package repository. Conda is different than pip in that Conda is only included in the Anaconda distribution, whereas pip is included in pretty much anywhere you'd get Python. Conda does a little more than pip though. Conda can be used to create and manage what are called virtual environments. Virtual environments are sandboxes for your code. Say you downloaded Anaconda. It comes with a ton of packages. In fact, if you do conda list in your terminal, you'll see that it comes with a huge number of packages. But let's say you didn't want to play around in an area that had a huge number of packages. You wanted to try something different, or you want a clean slate to work with for your project. Well, you can create a virtual environment. Virtual environments let you create these isolated sandboxes or areas of code and libraries so they don't conflict with other libraries or other dependencies. It's a way of organizing things that keeps everything neat and tidy. In my opinion, Conda is going to be the easiest tool to create and manage virtual environments for a beginner. Let's take a look at an example. The command to create a virtual environment with Conda is conda create. You specify the name with --name, the name of the virtual environment, and you can specify the Python version, in this case 3.8, the latest version of Python. This is just prompting you to install these basic packages as part of an initial environment setup. Now, virtual environments are a little more advanced topic that I'd normally be reluctant to introduce in an introductory tutorial. However, I wanted to demonstrate that you can get the latest version of Python with a clean installation in Anaconda. And I also wanted to explain why we got that error earlier where it said the environment hadn't been activated yet. You saw we used conda activate, the name of the environment, to activate our environment. Conda env list lists all of our environments, including showing which one activates. And conda deactivate deactivates our current virtual environment and returns us to the base environment. Before we jump too much further into launching things from the command line, if you've downloaded Anaconda, there is something called the Anaconda Navigator, which lets you browse packages, libraries, and additional software through a graphical user interface. So if you wanted to launch the Spyder IDE or Jupyter Notebooks, you can do so through Anaconda Navigator rather than typing things out on the command line. Okay, let's talk about code editors or IDEs, Integrated Development Environments. There's a bunch of them, and which one you choose is pretty much going to be left to your personal taste. So as part of this getting started, we're going to take a quick tour through a couple options that you have that might be good for a beginner. My personal recommendation for those just starting out is to use the Spyder IDE. This is included in Anaconda. If you have any experience with MATLAB, it's going to look very similar. You have a code editor on the left that lets you type longer scripts of code. In the bottom right, you have the IPython interactive terminal that lets you enter Python commands interactively and immediately see the output. And in the upper right, you have the help for quick reference to documentation. And you also have the very useful Variable Explorer. So as you type things into the IPython interactive console, or as you run scripts that you've written in the editor, you'll see the value of variables and functions in this Variable Explorer. So this helps you develop a good understanding. It's a great learning tool, and I highly recommend it. Next on the list of where to write your code is Jupyter Notebooks. Now this is also included in Anaconda. It's run in the browser, and what it does is it basically lets you enter blocks of code interactively, one line or several lines at a time, and then it immediately shows the output. And it's in a notebook form, so that means you can save it, come back to it. So because you can save and come back to it, it's a great tool for lessons or experiments where you want to have a history that you can refresh your memory. It's also very good at logging your work, how the code changes data as you progress. So it's very popular in the data science circles. If you're thinking about code editors, you might have heard of Visual Studio Code or VS Code. It's free. All these IDEs are free. Very popular, lightweight, and it's highly extensible, which means you can add extensions to really customize the features. Initially, there's not too many features involved, so it's great to start in that respect, but you could get a little overwhelmed with the sheer number of features and having to go into the marketplace to find the correct extension for what you're trying to do. Still, very popular, great choice, looks great, it's an option. Now, my personal IDE of choice that I use most often professionally is PyCharm. PyCharm is made by JetBrains on their IntelliJ platform, which is just a name for their technology. It's fully featured, and they have a free community edition. My personal experience is that when I was learning, I could find options and settings in the PyCharm IDE more easily than Visual Studio Code. Your mileage may vary, but if you're looking for a more advanced, fully featured editor with things like debuggers and test runners and referencing code inside and outside of your project, PyCharm is a great option. So let's review what we've learned in this lesson so far. We've learned how to download and install Python from either python.org or Anaconda. Anaconda is the batteries included option, and it's, again, my recommendation that it's easier to get started when all those tools are bundled together. We can install different packages or libraries through pip or conda, right? We can create a virtual environment if we want to experiment in a clean slate with conda. And we've taken a brief tour of several code editors so that you can select what interests you to begin your coding journey with Python. So what's next? Well, in the next tutorial, we're going to go a little more in depth on entering commands into the Python Interactive Interpreter, or the IPython Interactive Interpreter, which is basically just a little more advanced version than the regular one. We're also going to look at declaring variables, different basic Python data types like integers, floats, strings, lists, and dictionaries. Then we'll also talk about basic operations, adding things together, subtracting them, dividing, multiplying. Now, if you're really interested in diving further into this, in addition to future tutorials on this website, you can look at the written version at moderncoder.io. At the bottom, there are links to the official Python tutorial at python.org. There is also a link to a great book that's you can view for free, Automate the Boring Stuff. So I hope you've enjoyed this. If you've liked it, click like. If you're interested in seeing more content, go ahead and click subscribe. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next one.